Thank you for braving the weather. We're glad that you're with us tonight, and we're going to have a great discussion on topics of anxiety and coping with anxiety and kind of the psychology around anxiety. Before I go into the introduction of the program, I wanted to highlight our counseling program at school. Caroline Scholler's here, if you raise your hand. She is the director of counseling and does a great job of just meeting students wherever they are and whatever they need. She's got a great staff that includes Jake Lawrence, who's a certified counselor in North Carolina, if you consider that certified. But he's great and really connects with the students in amazing ways. And so I say it to say that these they love and they have more people beyond that. Is anybody else that's here with the counseling? I haven't seen anybody else. So just wanted to let you know about that resource to make sure that you are aware of it. It is Ash Wednesday, and I've got a true confession. I was talking with a colleague this week, and we were talking about this program, and they said, and I said, you know, we put on this program as really a facade for parents and students, and actually I'm the one that's taking notes. And this is really just stuff. So I think everybody can relate with the topic of anxiety, and so we're excited to kind of process that. This really started with the program last year we did with R.A. Dickey, where Stephen had a great conversation with him that was very transparent. It's actually online if you'd like to go back in our archives and see it. And it focused on just transparency and authenticity in your life and relationships. And R.A. mirrored that, and Stephen really drew that out for R.A. and mentored him in that way. And so this program will follow along the lines of that, and with more of a focus on anxiety, which we've, I think I was reading some things this week about GPAs and perseverance, and how the best way to determine a GPA the best determinant of perseverance is, or the best determinant of the GPA is somebody's ability to persevere, which is interesting. And so these life skills of how do we deal with the stresses of life and how do we overcome the hurdles are really important topics. So we really appreciate you being here. Stephen's the executive director of Sage Hill Counseling. He's written 5 books, the Art of the Wild Things, The Art of Nurturing Boys, which is a great book that I encourage you to check out. And he specializes in kind of group therapy and has a very robust practice that's a great resource for many. So please welcome Stephen Day.
Wow. It's a good introduction. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will. It's, I met Jake a minute ago, and he remarked something I was already thinking. It's wonderful that a school would even entertain the idea of talking about such a difficult topic of anxiety, and that so many people would come out on a good night to stay at home. And I called Will on the way over, and I said, "Hey, we sure we're doing this?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this is MBA. Like we're not afraid of weather, and we actually judge people who don't come to things like this because of ice and snow, and it's about building resiliency and being successful." And he and I laughed because it's an important topic, and how I want to structure the night is a little more of a conversation. I can talk at you and teach you stuff, but we actually don't learn that way. We learn more in dialogue. We learn more in conversation. So to start, I'd like to know, what kind of questions do you have? What kind of concerns do you have? What do you wonder about? What do you need to know about anxiety and depression? We're going to do depression too, because they're really the twins of the same problem. So what kind of questions do you have? Yes?
I imagine there's a fine line between I've got a lot to do and anxiety. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain, everybody just deals with like some schedule.
Or there's not a line. Yeah, so what's the
difference between just being busy and having a lot on our plate and being anxious?
That's a great question. Oh, we're still going to talk about that. That's good. Okay, what else? Yes?
Coping mechanisms.
What are some coping mechanisms? Okay? I'm going to disappoint you. That was a joke, kind of. Okay? What else?
Is there such a thing as healthy anxiety?
Healthy anxiety. Oh, great, very intuitive question. Okay, what else?
Motivation versus pushing.
What's
How do you balance as a parent whether you're motivating versus pushing?
okay? I'm going to give you. That's a great question. I'm going to give you a freebie. There's no such thing as balance. Okay, if you're trying to do balance, you've already lost. So don't do balance. There's choice and loss. You choose something. You motivate. You push. You don't motivate. You don't push. There's all kinds of consequences on either side of both those. So one, there's no balance. Just write that down. Get a tattoo. Call Oprah. Tell her. Okay, there's no such thing as balance. Right. So, I mean, that's anxiety relieving right there. To go, I can't obtain balance? No. Somebody ever been to I tore my ACL, exploded my knee in college, right after college, and I went to got the surgery, and I was on this balance board afterwards. You know, with this thing? It's a piece of wood, plywood, with a half a racquetball glued underneath. Guess what you can't do on that? Balance. All right. That's a great metaphor of life. So, pushing. What's pushing? Oh, God. What's motivating? Okay, that's great. We'll talk about that. Yes.
Connection between anxiety, depression, and substance abuse and suicide thoughts.
Okay, there is what is the connection? That's great. Okay, so we have, anxiety. I'm going to throw addiction in there too, okay? Anxiety instead of just substance abuse. Anxiety. I'm starting to not spell anxiety. A-N-X-I-E-T. Anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide. Oh, that's a great. We can almost start with that question. That's a great question. We'll do one or two more. Framing the talk right now. Yes.
What about when is it time to give medication, and how bad is that for these younger brains in their development?
Great question. Okay, medicine. Oh, that's a great question. And one more over here.
Signs of anxiety.
Signs of anxiety. Yes. What are the signs? I realized a second ago I was on my knees writing on a board, and that seemed very undignified. So right at the top. Any of the young men have questions? I see some young men. I promise I'll try to make you laugh. I'll try to do something funny. If I had candy, I would throw the candy out. That's what my co-author who wrote Wild Things, David Thomas, does to get people to talk. He gives them candy. It works every time. Yes, Todd Prevost. Hey, man.
Hey, Steve. What's the way out?
What's the way out?
Way out of anxiety.
Okay. Ooh. Todd. Okay, I paid Todd for that question. That's a great one. Okay, way out. Yeah, that question right there is going to blow your mind. The answer to anxiety is actually going to blow your mind. And the answer to depression is going to blow your mind. We'll talk about that. Okay, any of the young men have a question about it? You don't have to. No gold stars. Parents, do not feed your children questions. Yes?
I know this is more about boys, but do boys and girls differ in their
Anxiety, how they manifest anxiety. They certainly do in depression. We'll go over here. We'll go male, female. Okay? Yeah, that's a great, we'll need to talk about that too. Good. Okay.
What about devices and anxiety?
What?
Devices and anxiety.
Oh, good, yes, yeah. Oh my gosh, this thing right here. This is an anxiety-producing machine right here. If you want to improve your life, get rid of this thing. Look at that, it's going off right now. Hold on. I hope the talk goes well. Well, now if I don't respond, I'm a jerk, right? If I do respond, I'm a jerk. And all of a sudden, I'm having this level of something come up inside of me that says, oh no, right? So let's take a trip back in time, 6 million years ago. Okay, 6 million years ago, some form of bipedal creature crawled out of the muck and had an idea of itself, right? Human evolution tells us that hominids became active in community about 6 million years ago. And that's a pretty good guess. It could be 5 million, all right? But there's this little thing right here called the brainstem. And these people, these things, they weren't quite human yet, but they had this impulse to kind of like want stuff. They go, right? Right? The caveman, okay? And we still have a lot of that in us. We still got a lot of in us, you know? Like, I want food. Food good. See, he knew what I was talking about, right? I don't have to say much. This guy go, and he's like, y'all know. If I go, right? Okay? That's the brainstem, okay? The brainstem's really, really powerful, okay? It's so powerful that it can jack up everything else. And the brainstem says one thing. It says, ooh, ooh, ooh. And if we translated that, it would, yes?
Is that why teenagers grunt?
Yes, that's why men grunt a lot. That's why teenagers grunt a lot. That's why women grunt a lot. That's why people grunt. Yeah, teenage boys, though, brainstem. Ugh. How's your day? Yeah. What happened at school today? Cool, man. What's going on? You see, watch guys walk down the hall. It's like, That's like a whole conversation, you know? And if you're listening to, actually you're stepping into the next level, the limbic brain. But this UG part of the brain is really looking for one thing. It's looking for safety. It's looking for security. And it's asking the question, I'm left-handed. You know, there's discrimination against left-handed people. I was taught in school, because I had this teacher who hated left-handed people, and she made you turn your paper like a right-handed person to write, and so I had to learn to write upside down. So now I need the board to be upside down so I can write on it. But this UG is asking, am I alive or dead? Okay? Is this good or bad? Good, bad. Ooh, fire good, fire bad. Like, that's all it's doing. Okay? Life or death. Life or death, life or death. And in science, there's this thing called parsimony, or what's the razor? The Occam's razor. Thank you. Occam's razor says the most efficient. I saw somebody in there. The most efficient explanation of something is always the best. And nature has this way of refining things down to their most basic and simplest way. So the oldest systems in nature are the most efficient, the most elegant. The oldest system in the human brain is the brainstem. It does not think. It does not feel. It just does. And it controls heart rate. It controls respiration. It controls this area down here. Okay? Like, it controls, you know what that area is? What I'm talking about? Okay. It controls lots of stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. All right. He knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. So it controls lots of stuff, right? And it's even so powerful that if you're lost at sea and you have no water, you know what happens if you drink salt water? You die. Yeah. You know how much salt water you have to drink to die? Not much. Burns your kidneys up. You start going to renal failure. And you really start drowning in your own stuff, and you die. Okay? Is that pretty good? Pretty good? Okay? Okay? If you're lost at sea in 3 days, and you know that, guess what you're going to do? You're going to drink the water. You will drink the salt water. Everybody in this room would drink the salt water. There's not one person in this room that could outsmart their brainstem to not drink the salt water. I think that's cool. And I think that's so fundamental to knowing about anxiety. That anxiety is not a thinking problem, okay? It's not an intellectual problem. It's not a moral problem, right? It's not I'm a bad person because I'm anxious or depressed, okay? And it's not an emotional, spiritual, it's an emotional problem. It's not a spiritual willpower problem. It's not because I'm a bad person, okay? Anxiety is a holdover of human evolution. Because for like 6 million years to about 4 million years, 5 million, like 6 million to 2 million years, 4 million years, this is all that mattered. Alive or dead, alive or dead, alive or dead. Alive or dead, alive or dead, alive or dead, alive. That's all it was. Okay? And then pretty soon, though, these like packs of things kind of turned into more humans, and they drew some cave paintings on the wall, and they started living in community. And this region of the brain, right here, called the limbic brain, came along. And every mammal has a big limbic brain. Okay? And it's a little bigger, so it's a little less efficient. Right? And this is like feelings, this is needs, this is desires, this is longings. This is where post-traumatic stress disorder happens. This is where memory happens, of emotional memory. This is where smell, like, stores memory. Strongest memory sense is smell. Okay? Like, this is a powerful part of the brain. Nicholas Sparks is a master of this part of the brain. Nicholas Sparks wrote, for you young men, Nicholas Sparks wrote all these sappy movies you'd never ever want to watch till you're about 24 and on a date. And you take a girl with Nicholas Sparks movie, put one in, and it's perfect. Perfect. Okay, she'll cry, you hand her your handkerchief, it's wonderful stuff, okay? But this is the Nicholas Sparks region of the brain, okay? And he is great at manipulating people's feelings because this part of the brain loves a good story, right? This is the Braveheart part of the brain. This is like, freedom, yeah! And this brain is asking a little more elegant question than alive or dead, is, am I okay? And every mammal is asking that question. And the only way a mammal knows if it's okay is if it's not alone. Okay, because death, human beings, all mammals, are hardwired with three great fears. The fear of heights. If I took you to the Empire State Building, I strapped you in a harness, and I explained to your frontal lobe that you're not going to die, there's nothing unsafe about this, and then I held you out over the Empire State Building, your heart rate would go up, your lungs would fill with oxygen, adrenaline would run to all the extremities of your body, you would be in terror. Okay? So we're afraid of heights, we're afraid of bang! Loud noises. Every mammal, every human's afraid of loud noises, and we're afraid of abandonment. Because to the human brain, loud noises, heights, and abandonment all equal death. They all equal death. Human beings are not made to be alone. We're made to be in relationship. We're pair bonding creatures. We live, look at all us here tonight, we're all in community. Okay, we're all talking about things. You're nodding at me, which means you understand what I'm talking about, or you're not nodding, which means you don't want to admit that you need other people, that's okay. I've been there, okay? But we all need other people, all right? We all need community. And so about 2 million years ago, people started huddling together like in caves with fires, right? And they started going, hey, this works better. Us being together, being in relationship, being in community, caring for each other, okay? Having babies. The optimum distance for human relationship and human encounter is 18 inches. It's real intimate. It's the distance of a mother holding a child. Right? It's like all the stuff that's wired to make us be in relationship. Okay? And that part of the brain is saying, am I okay? Another way of saying that is like, is anybody out there? Is anybody out there? You know, am I alone? Are you with me? Okay? And these are the oldest two parts of the human brain. They're in every mammal. This is what makes dogs best. This is what makes dogs better than cats, quite frankly. Okay, I'm sure there's some cat people in the room, but if you talk to a cat person about why you love cats, it's because they like don't do anything. And you say, if you have a really great cat, they'll say it's a lot like a dog. Like it comes to you, it wants to be petted, like it plays with you. They just start describing the cat like a dog. So this is even dogs want to attach. Dogs want to feel. Dogs want to be in a pack. Dogs want to be in relationship. Dogs, dolphins. Dolphins got big limbic systems. Pigs have gigantic limbic systems. Pigs are very relational. They'll follow you around. They're more loyal than dogs. Okay? So this part of the brain is really, really important. Anxiety, we'll talk about that in a minute. Then you have this other part of the brain that's kind of brand new, and it's really big, which means it's inefficient from a evolutionary standpoint. It's called the frontal lobe or the prefrontal lobe. And this is the part that premise, reason, logic, rhetoric, conclusion, emphasis, structure, content. Okay? That's that part of the brain. It categorizes things, it assigns values, it judges things, but it's asking another question. Am I okay? It's asking, what's going to happen next? Okay? That's what this part of the brain is designed to ask. And in boys, this part of the brain is not fully developed till 24 years old. The boy's ability to predict future outcomes and have executive ego regulation function and have the ability to like have judgment about if I drive my car fast, I might wreck or I might get a ticket, is not there until 24 years old. That's why rental car companies will not rent a car to people till they're 25. It's not because they're discriminating against 18-year-olds. It's because there's actuary tables that say, well, people below the age of 25 wreck a lot because they can't think. Their frontal lobe is not intact. They go, ooh, fast, feel good. Okay? Right? And I was lucky enough to get married at 22, which is really young, right? 22. I was literally a boy when I got married. My wife was 23. She was a woman because the women's brains finished developing around 1920. You know? And in high school, boys from a frontal lobe development are about 2 years behind in the development of a woman. Okay? And that's going to be really important in a minute when we start talking about this. And so this conversation is always going on in the human experience. Okay? Am I okay? Are you with me? Is anybody out there? And what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And when you tie this question, what's going to happen next, to am I okay, you have something called anxiety. Because if I can't tell what's going to happen next, guess what happens? This part of the brain says to this part of the brain, watch out, we're in trouble. Right? And there's sometimes that's really good. Like you're at war, that's a really good thing. You're about to wreck your car, that's a really good thing. You're in a fight with somebody, like a physical fight, that's a good thing. You don't need to be thinking, if someone's going to hit you, like, oh, the fist is coming in at this angle, and I need to calculate for that. That's ridiculous, right? You need to go, ah! Okay? That's called, like, good wiring. That's called, we were created really well. Like, this is made right. But what happens in our world now is we still carry around these structures, okay? That this is the overriding, this is the, you've seen the movie Inside Out? Who's seen the movie Inside Out's a great way of talking about this. This part of the brain is really loud all the time. It's wondering, am I okay? Like, it's just like, live dead, live dead, live dead, okay? And this part of the brain's going, I don't know, let me check. We okay? Anybody out there? But these don't have eyes. This has the eyes, metaphorically. The eyes are actually, down here. But this has the eyes. And it's going, I don't know, let me look and see what's going to happen next. Okay? This part of the brain, frontal lobe, that we spend so much time educating, so much time rationalizing, so much time trying to figure out. Okay? This part of the brain actually knows very little about what's going on inside a person. All mindfulness stuff. We'll talk about mindfulness later. Mindfulness is this great new word that everyone's talking about just noticing what's going on right now. And back in agrarian cultures, when there wasn't much distraction, guess what people didn't have a lot of? Anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression are first world diagnoses. In third world countries, unless there's war going on, you cannot diagnose anxiety and depression. It does not exist. Okay? We've built a world of relative safety now, okay, that's very safe, except our brains haven't caught up with it. And we have a false belief that unless I achieve some level of success or notoriety or power, then I'm not okay. And I'll be alone, I'm going to die. And so I better do well or I will die. That is the fundamental problem in the world. Is that if I don't achieve or I don't obtain or I don't succeed, then I will die. Anxiety, by definition, in the big manual called the DSM, is the fear of death. Okay? Anxiety is a fear of death. It's a death fear. And the actual anxiety, the definition is an unreasonable fear of what's happening. That's what anxiety is. That something's happening, and it's scary, or not scary, but I have a lot of fear going on. That's what anxiety is. And it's this part of the brain going, I don't know what's going to happen next. We might not be okay, and we might die. That's what anxiety is. Right? And that is a snowball. If you tell yourself, I don't want my palms to sweat, guess what's likely going to happen? Palms are going to sweat. Okay? It's called performance anxiety. You start getting the idea that you're not going to do well, It's death for a golfer. You step up to a golf ball. Yeah, everybody plays golf. Man, his address to the ball is terrible. You step up to a golf ball and you start thinking about how well you're going to hit the ball or how badly you're going to hit the ball. You're not going to hit the ball. But the best golfers are learning now to not think about anything. Literally just not think, hit the ball, and then go to the next shot and then look at their scores after the game. Because anxiety gets in the way of performance. Anxiety gets in the way of presence. Fear, okay? Fear keeps us from the very thing that this part of the brain's asking for, which is called relationship and security. Am I okay? And if we have people in our life that are telling us we're okay, we're safe, I'm with you, we can go do really crazy, scary things. That's what the Army's built upon. You trust your sergeant, you listen to your sergeant, he says go to war, you go to war because you trust that man. Because you believe he has your back. Movie, Mel Gibson movie. What's the movie? They're going to war. Huh? We Were Soldiers. Thank you. He has this great speech, and he says to the soldiers and to the 50 family members there to watch their sons and husbands go off to war. He says, "We're going to a place where family was always meant to be. Going to war." And he says something like that. He says, "I promise I'll be the first foot on the battlefield, and I'll be the last foot off, and I will leave no man behind." They're able to go do really scary things because they know this man is with them. Okay? That's the only solution to anxiety, this true solution to anxiety. We're going to skip around. What's the way out of anxiety? Is to be loved. To be in a secure relationship with yourself, others, and the world around you, your God. It's the only solution to anxiety. Medicine does not cure anxiety because anxiety is not a problem. Anxiety is normal. Depression is normal. It's normal. This world is really scary. I mean, I don't think the world's scary and dangerous. Like, we can live over in West Nashville where everything's safe and pretty. Like, we can do that. But it's like a scary place. Like, bad things happen. Unpredictable things happen. I promise that none of you can predict what's going to happen, really going to happen next. No one predicted that. See, I told you. See, no one can predict. I didn't even predict that. I just went with it, you know. But anxiety is normal. Anxiety is so normal. So normal. Depression is so normal. They're symptoms. They're indications that something's going wrong, that I need something. That's all they are. And the problem we have in our world, in our culture, in our medical society, is that we've separated the brain, the mind, from the body. And what science is teaching us now, too late in some ways, is that there's no difference between the mind and the body. They're all one thing. The mind and the body are all one thing. I got a friend who was really depressed for a long time. And in his serious depression, he developed an addiction to alcohol and to internet pornography. And it's ruined his marriage, and he's getting divorced. In his recovery, someone suggested to him, "Hey, why don't you go to the doctor?" And he went to the doctor, and he had a tumor in his brain. What part of the brain? The pituitary gland. Had a tumor in the pituitary gland. Okay, the guy was overweight. He was depressed. He was lethargic. Took some medicine. Tumor goes down. Guess what happens? Stops drinking, loses weight, gets a job. Like, his whole life changed. Now, he had diagnosable depression. Okay? He also had a tumor on his pituitary gland. Right? Was he depressed? Yes. Did he have a tumor? Yes. Is he still kind of a jerk sometimes? Yes. Does he still get depressed sometimes? Absolutely. Has he lost 50 pounds? Yes. Right? There's no difference. There's a researcher at Harvard, and she's been ahead of the curve. She started this studies in the early 70s. In 1980, she took 100 80-year-olds. Now, in 1980, for some of you young men, 80 was really, really old. Okay? 80 was like, these people are still alive. Like in 1980, 80 years old was like, they're going to die any moment. She took these people to a camp, and she fitted the camp in 1960s. Like TV, all the TVs were playing 1960s television, all the music was 1960s music, all the furniture was 1960s, and everyone talked like it was 1960, present tense. In 1 week, there's people, of the 100 geriatric patients who went, in 1 week, people they were cured from diabetes, their eyesight got better, their blood pressure went down, okay, they got stronger without any exercise. Okay? She goes, I'm on to something. Right? Then she did this study with chambermaids in London where she divided them in half, told one half of the group, hey, what you're doing is called work. Every day, what you're doing is called work. Told the other half of the group, hey, did you know what you're doing is exercise? They were doing the same thing. The group that she told were exercising lost weight. Just because she told them they were exercising. It's powerful stuff. Okay? There's no difference between the mind and the body. They're all interconnected. I would say there's no difference between the mind, body, and the soul. They're all interconnected. They're all woven together. And if we don't start recognizing and taking like real stock of, I am here right now, I cannot be in the future, then we can't solve anxiety. Right? And anxiety is a fear. It's just fear. And it's the active imagination of what bad things can happen. That's a great working definition of anxiety. It's the hijacking of the imagination to predict what bad things can happen in the future. And like a hamster on a wheel, once that thing starts going, well, that bad thing could happen, but then that bad thing could happen, and then that bad thing can happen, and then that bad thing could happen, and then that bad thing could happen about that bad thing, and then which bad thing's going to happen? That's called anxiety. And it's like this supercomputer right here trying to answer a question it can't answer is, am I okay? This can't answer the question. It can only answer what's going to happen next. That's all it can do. The only thing so anxiety is the supercomputer. Depression, okay, is holding a beach ball underwater. You ever tried to hold a beach ball underwater? How long can you do that? Big beach ball. Not long. What happens when it shoots up? You go do it again. You get really tired doing that. Okay? So depression is the active suppression of all of this function. It's like, I don't want to have to deal with this because it's so hard. And most of us tend towards anxiety. I tend towards anxiety. And others of us tend towards depression. Here's the tricky thing. If I tend towards anxiety and I don't have tools to deal with it in a way other than my DNA, than just being a mammal, right? Then my brain's going to go, hey, this isn't working. We need to depress ourselves. And it will release chemicals that cause me to be depressed. And then if I get too down, my brain's going to release chemicals that say, hey, this isn't good. It's not good for you to be this lethargic. You don't know what's going to happen next. Then it swings back over depression. And pretty soon you're a person standing on both sides of a creek, an ever-widening creek. It's getting wider and wider. Is he going to do the splits? That's what we're wondering. No, I'm not. Okay, and so it's just DNA. Anxiety and depression are just DNA. They're normal parts of being a mammal. A few years ago, we went out of town. I live over in East Nashville, which is like avant-garde, where cool restaurants are. But it's like this cool place. And we were there like before, like gentrified. So we were like there when it was like urban, And we were in this other house at this point, and we left town. Well, in an urban neighborhood, when you leave town, you don't turn your lights off and not leave a car in the driveway. That's an invitation to come in and take what you want to take, right? But I grew up in Brentwood, so we didn't think that way, right? So we left town, and we got a call halfway to Atlanta. We were going to a theme park in Atlanta. Our neighbor said, hey, there's police outside your house. And we're like, what? Let's go police outside our house. And our first thought was, oh, no, our dog. Like a little Zuzu dog, poor Zuzu. So we race home. Our neighbor goes into our house, finds the dog locked in a bedroom. Our dog's a little scared now, right? Our dog is just doing what a dog does. It's just scared, Like, there's a knock at the door. Our dog doesn't go bark. It runs. Like, it's like, thanks, dog. Like, someone must be at the door. The dog's running to the other end of the house. Okay? That's anxiety. That's PTSD. And PTSD is stored in this part of the brain. Okay? The limbic brain. The PTSD doesn't need thought. It just needs a feel. Right? So this anxiety, depression are a push and pull. One way to describe it is hyperphobic. Okay? Hyperphoric. Anxiety is hyperphoria. It's trying to make life go well. Okay? Or hypophoria. It's trying to make life go well. Those are normal responses to life. Because if you're anxious or you're depressed, you're normal. Okay? So go back to here. What's the difference between being busy and anxious? The only difference is Busy is my anxieties pointed towards something. That's the only difference. Okay? I have a wife. That's God. My wife Heather sounded so objective and pejorative. My wife Heather, she tends towards anxiety also. She's a real good list maker, right? And when her anxiety is high, the lists are real long. And when her anxiety is low, the lists are real short. And when she's really anxious, she adds things to the list she's already done. Right? People are nodding because that's like, because people, we do that. We're scared. Like, I've got to do something with all this stress, all this distress. There's got to be something to do. You know, that's anxiety. That's the difference. When you have we'll talk about depression, because that's anxiety. Depression. When you have the flu, did you know there's not a lot of physiological reasons why you can't get out of bed when you have the flu? Yes, you're tired. Yes, your body aches. But your brain produces a neurological signature called depression. If you took a snapshot, a SPECT scan of the brain of a person with the flu, it would light up just like the brain of a person with severe clinical depression. Your brain is saying, keep your butt in bed. Do not get out of bed. And I've been so sick with the flu, I've wanted to die. I've had suicidal ideation. I've prayed to God, please kill me. Has anybody else ever had that experience? Like, I feel so bad, I just want to. That's called suicidal ideation. If I could just hold my breath, I might die. Okay, that's clinically, like, you can diagnose that, right? That's a diagnosable clinical thing. If someone's in my office, I'm talking to them and said, do you ever think about, like, wanting to die? No, sometimes I think about just not being here. That's called suicidal ideation, right? When you have the flu, you want to die because it's so bad. That's just normal. That's normal, okay? So, everybody understand that anxiety and depression are normal, that they're biological holdover from evolution, and that we're made to be on the lookout for what bad could happen. And if we can't find it, instead of frying our brain, we're made to then retreat into this other thing called depression that kind of keeps us safe. If you thought of it this way, little mammals, something bad happens, mammals usually do one of two things. They usually run or they burrow in a hole. The running's anxiety, the burrowing's depression. Maybe they won't find me here. Okay. You're a little kid, you're playing hide and seek. It's like, if they don't see me, you know, like, right? It's not a stupid idea. That's a child thinking like a child. So anxiety and depression are normal. It has a long time to get there. They're not moral failures. They're not lack of willpower. They're not lack of intellect. So what are the causes? This is one of the questions, right? No. What are the causes? I'll say this. Biology is a cause. Biology is a huge cause to anxiety, right, and depression. If you don't sleep for a few days, you're going to get depressed. If someone wakes you up in the middle of the night, you're going to be anxious. If you have sleep apnea, you're probably going to be depressed or anxious. Okay? If you're an adolescent and you're not getting 10 hours of sleep, you're going to tend towards anxiety or depression. If you're a grown-up, you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, you're going to be more apt to be afraid or be depressed. Okay? Biology and your state, your physiological state, like the flu, okay, makes you depressed, has a huge impact on whether or not you're anxious or depressed. Another one is heredity. There's this thing called epigenetics, which is like genes that get turned on in your body before you're born. Okay? One study looked at grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. Their cortisol level, or stress hormone, was twice as high at birth than other Jewish babies whose grandparents did not survive the Holocaust. I'll say it again because that's like a big deal from a hereditary standpoint. Jewish children whose grandparents survived the Holocaust were born twice as anxious. They were already on alert for bad things to happen than other Jewish children of the same generation. Okay? And we know this now too, that men who are obese at the time of conception, okay, not after conception, before conception, but at the time of conception, their children are more likely to be obese when they grow up. The genes are turned on. Now, from an evolutionary standpoint, it was good to be fat. That was a good thing to store up fat, you know, because like you never know where the food's going to come from. That's actually, you know, a really good thing. But epigenetics are a huge part. Genes are a huge part of the anxiety depression chain. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, you're prone to it. Your parents were children of alcoholics. You're probably going to have anxiety or depression. Okay? Here's something that's really interesting. We've not yet had we're just now coming into it, but we're starting to move back into it. We've not yet had a generation of children in our country whose parents or grandparents have not been traumatized by significant war. That the biggest victims of the Civil War, War of 1812, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Gulf War, the biggest victims were not the ones that died. It was the men that came home, men and women now that came home, and they don't know how to re-enter because they've been in such a state that they're passing along genetic material that says, watch out, be afraid. And in World War I, the men came home so traumatized because it was the first mechanized war. If you read about World War I, it was awful. There's this mill of just throwing human bodies at human bodies and mechanized warfare and mustard gas. And what those men saw was horrific. And the men that lived, their sons didn't get much of them because they were impaired because of the war trauma, which is most of the men in America. And if you weren't one of those men that went to war, guess what you thought of yourself? Right? Didn't have a good self-image. Then World War II, a bunch of American men go off to war, and that was bad too. That was really bad. And though the greatest generation came home, I'll tell you, the greatest generation weren't great parents. They were noble men who did a very significant task to keep evil at bay, called Hitler. Okay? But they weren't great parents because they came home damaged, and their fathers were damaged. And then their sons, a lot of their sons went to Korea and Vietnam. Okay? We have this, and now we're seeing soldiers who just kill themselves. Suicide in the military is huge. They're trying to figure out why. It's because we've been at war for like 5 generations. And people are being told, well, it should be safe, but all their genetic material says this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Okay? So heredity is a huge point. Psychology is another cause of depression. Psychology, my definition of psychology, is how we make meaning, okay, which is based on our early childhood attachment to our primary caregivers. So if I had an anxious mother, okay, she was anxious. She had great reasons to be anxious. It's not bad because she was anxious. I have some anxiety because, like, for me, like the feeling of like, how's mom doing? Like, that creates some anxiety in me. Am I okay? You know, never kind of really knew, right? And no matter what kind of parent you are, you're not a great enough parent. Like every parent in here is screwing up their kids, which is great for my business, okay, right? But not so good for human society. Like we're screwing up our kids. Like we're not everything they need. Then you get married and you find out your spouse isn't either. Like, oh gosh, I thought I'd get married and this person would save me from what my family couldn't do, and they're just as bad. Right? And there's a reason for that. It's called limbic attractors, that this part of the brain picks spouses. The limbic brain picks spouses, and the limbic brain is formed by relationship with the mother and father. And so I'm going to pick something that reminds me of home every time. You put an adult child of an alcoholic in a room with 100 people and one alcoholic, you give them 15 minutes, they'll find the alcoholic. They will just, their brain will go, okay? We are made to attach. We're made for relationship. We're made for community. We're made for intimacy, right? Okay? And so in my early attachment, birth to 18 months old, all this is done at 18 months old. So you can't even do therapy to fix it, right? Like you don't pick your kid up because you're doing like the Ezzo's methods of like teaching your kid to sleep, right? And they're going to develop anxiety. You pick your kid up, they're going to develop anxiety. Like you're going to screw your kid up, okay? In the first 18 months. Right? Even if you do everything right, you're going to screw your kid up because they're human. And you can't always be there for them. They're going to have feelings about it, and they can't get their needs met. Okay? So and they're going to start making meaning around that. And the meaning they're going to make is something must be wrong with me because I'm crying and mommy's not coming to me. Or I'm crying and daddy's holding me and I can't stop crying. And that's on a deep level that they're making meaning. Something must be wrong with me. And they start looking out and I'm not okay, wondering what's going to happen next. And that's everybody in this room. That's everybody in here. No one escaped that. Everybody has a psychological impairment. Everybody. All of y'all. Even if you went to Vanderbilt, you still got it. Or Harvard. Oh my gosh, Harvard. They're crazy at Harvard. You know? So Psychology is a part of anxiety and depression. Environment. Okay? You live in a stressful environment, you're going to have anxiety and depression. That's normal. You be on the lookout. You live in inner city Chicago, you better be anxious. You better be anxious because you don't know where the next bullet's coming from. Or you better be depressed because there's no way out of poverty. You're born into that, you're not getting out of it. Okay? Big political statement. That isn't, you don't know who I vote for. That's a sociological true statement. Now how we fix that we can debate politically. But how was that? Dancing? Maybe I should run for office. That was a pretty good dance. I hate everybody. I'm going to save everybody. Vote for me. New Hampshire. That was a joke. So anxiety is good in those environments, right? You live in a home where someone has a temper, okay? You better be anxious. You know, that environmental stress, you know, that's a big deal. You live in the 1960s and you're being prepared at school for nuclear attack. Duck and cover, duck and cover. That you better be anxious. You're being told you're going to die at any moment. When are the rescues going to attack? Right? Okay, that's scary. Okay, so environment has a big deal. Okay? Trauma has a huge deal to it. A loose definition of trauma is an inability to make story out of what's happening to me on an emotional level. That so much is coming into me painfully and fear, and I can't make a narrative out of it, I can't make a story, then it bypasses what's going to happen next and goes right into this part of the brain. Okay? And that memory gets stored in the brain in a way that doesn't know time and it doesn't know space. It just knows like an outline of things. Think of a soldier coming home from war and you tap him on the shoulder and he turns around ready to kill you. Okay? That's his limbic brain saying you better watch out. And we have bad things that happen to us when we're little, when we're middle, when we're old that we can't make sense of. That's called trauma. And everybody here is a victim of some level of trauma, some of us victims of greater trauma than others. Okay? And that produces anxiety or depression because those are normal responses, especially if you don't have other coping mechanisms. I got 10 minutes. Okay? I'm going to ask questions in just a second. Jump. Brainstem, we did that. Okay, so what are some coping mechanisms? Primary coping mechanism for anxiety and depression is human attachment. So all the science is teaching us now. I've been studying the brain for 50 years, and guess what we found out? People need people. It's like, whoa! They're proving it true now, like we're made for a relationship. The number one coping mechanism for anxiety and depression is human attachment, is good relationship. Okay? Medicine is good to help alleviate the symptoms. Doesn't cure. Doesn't change the fundamental neuropathways. Okay? Exercise is wonderful. Okay? Therapy is actually really good. It's proven to be helpful. Exercise, relationship, and therapy, any one of those is just as effective as medication by itself. Okay? So if you're anxious or depressed, go run. You know, go for a walk. Telling a depressed person to go run, it's like, you know, telling me not to eat chocolate. Like, that's crazy. But telling an anxious person to sit and meditate, you know, if you're anxious, you ought to sit and practice some mindfulness meditation. That's ridiculous. Like, an anxious person can't sit still for 5 seconds, right? But medicine helps, exercise helps, relationship helps, and therapy helps. Those are good things. They're not the only things. Those are the most available things. Let me jump ahead. Okay, so exercise. I said exercise. I said relationship, like real relationship. Like real, like, am I okay? Like, I'm going to fail this test. I'm really scared. Like, teacher, am I going to be okay? Yeah, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Your life's not going to, it's a big secret, guys. Listen, you fail a test, you're still going to be all right. Like, you could get an F in high school, you could fail a whole grade, and you could still be successful. Okay? Abraham Lincoln only won one election. You know what it was? President of the United States. He lost everything else. Talk about resiliency, right? Perseverance. He was also hugely depressed and married a mentally ill woman. Like, see, he was a relational train wreck. Okay? That's true. It was true. He sat and cried about his dead son for years. The poor guy was so broken. And what a better man to lead a nation through trauma and catastrophe than a man who knew brokenness, right? It's a good thing, but like, I don't know how I got on Abraham Lincoln. How did I get on Abraham Lincoln? Example of depression. Okay. So relationships really important. Real relationship. Real relationship. Am I okay? Teacher, am I okay? Coach, am I okay? Think about how much a coach, this is Olympic coaches. There's a Fuller University in California has found out that track athletes can run up to 2 or 3 tenths faster 100-yard dashes, which is incredible for a high-level athlete to improve that much, if they believe their coach loves them. If they believe their trainer loves them, they'll run faster. If a football player believes their coach has their back whether they catch the ball or not, he will play better. If a wrestler believes that the outcome of his well-being is not, his coach is going to be okay, if he wins or loses, he'll actually wrestle harder and go longer. Athletes are learning now that this yelling at somebody and shaming them, my Donaldsonness came out where I grew up, shaming them, they're learning that fear and shame actually inhibit athletic performance. That's something. And they're actually, it's science, like it's all common sense. I love when science catches up with common sense because I feel like we discovered something. Love makes people perform better, not fear and shame. Okay? So good relationship, good therapy. There's lots of bad therapy out there. Nashville's full of lots of therapists. A lot of bad therapists out there. Okay? A good therapist who understands what's really going on in a person and knows that your cognitions won't change what's going on inside of you, won't change your neurochemical wiring, that it has to be something else. It can really help somebody overcome anxiety and depression, learn to understand and interpret life in a different way. Okay? A trick that you can, a friend of mine's house burned down. And when she called, she's a really wonderful woman. When she called the insurance guy, she said, "Hey, I've had a fire at my house, and the house is destroyed. I need you to come look at it." And it was right before Christmas a few years ago. And the guy's like, "Okay." And when he came, he was in shock. He said, "Your house really is destroyed." She goes, "Well, I told you that on the phone." And he said, "Ma'am, you don't understand. This is the first phone call I've gotten in 30 years as an insurance adjuster where the fire was actually worse than the phone call." Right? And he said, "How did you do this?" This is a good little therapy trick. She said, "Well, I just told myself, wow, now I don't have to get rid of all that stuff." Like she had this idea in her head that she was going to be okay and that there might be a way through this that could be good for her. There's not just loss. There's an opportunity. That's why there's no balance. Every loss becomes an opportunity. And that's a really healthy idea that solves all kinds of anxiety. I wonder what's going to happen good for me now that this other thing didn't happen. If you could practice noticing that inside yourself, anxiety goes down. Hope comes up. Okay? So good therapy can help you do that. Medication is wonderful. Medication and certain supplements that nourish the brain are wonderful, with a caveat. Okay? Medication does not cure anxiety, and medication cannot cure depression. We know what happens in anxiety so well that we can give a pill and their anxiety can go away like that. Like that. With depression, we don't know much. Depression medications only work as a side effect, and they take 2 or 3 weeks for an uptake in the brain enough to cause results. And in most depression medications, the placebo, the most powerful drug ever invented that's cured cancer, depression, anxiety, back pain, it's a powerful drug, okay, works as well as antidepressants. That doesn't mean that you don't take antidepressants if you're depressed, because it can help you get a lift. But if you believe the medicine's going to cure you, it can't. Unless you really believe it, then it will. Okay? Does that make sense? So you're as well off if you have a long-term depression, getting therapy and exercising and being in a relationship, you're better off than just taking medicine. So if you've been on medicine for a long time, like we're in a couple of years, those medicines were designed to work for 6 months. You read the label, 6 months, 6 to 8 months. That's the design of the medicine, to get you through something. Okay? Then you better do some work to repair what was damaged that you're coping with your DNA. Right? So medication's awesome. It's really awesome. Diet is huge. Okay? How good do people feel about themselves the day after Thanksgiving? Right? You eat all that stuff, you're like, oh, God, I just want to go to bed. I feel terrible. Oh, right? Or if you don't eat for a couple days, like, you're anxious. Like healthy diet, eating healthy foods, caffeine. I'm now 6 weeks without caffeine. I need a round of applause for that, please. That's a big deal. Thank you. Okay. Because I noticed kind of towards the end of the year, my eye was twitching. I'd be counseling people, like really trying to care about them, but my eye's going like, I'm thinking, these people are looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, maybe I am crazy. Okay. It was anxiety. I had a lot going on. It's the end of the year. I'd grown my business a bunch last year. Like, I was freaking out. You know? I got rid of caffeine. My eye's not twitching. Quit drinking caffeine. Well, I only drink 3 or 4 cups a day. Great. Quit drinking it. No. Okay. Sugar. Oh, my gosh. Sugar is the #1 addiction in America. It's the most addictive substance on the market. More addictive than alcohol. Okay. In a study with laboratory rats, sugar was chosen 3rd next to heroin and cocaine. It's like, I'll do the heroin, I'll do the cocaine, I'll do the sugar. Like the rats would go push the sugar lever over meth, over marijuana. Okay? We have the most obese poor people in the world. Right? Huge sugar problem. Okay? You want to not be anxious, want to be depressed? Cut out caffeine and sugar. Slowly, please slowly. You'll have terrible headaches. You'll be a pain to live with. Like just step down a little bit at a time. Don't go on a diet. Diet's terrible. But like just slowly work yourself off caffeine. I've got my green tea here. Right? I've been drinking green tea like a fool since I've given up caffeine. I got some decaf coffee. It tastes a little terrible. Right? Like it's great. They make decaf coffee. Do you know that? Like that's, I don't know why. It tastes like mud. It's terrible. Okay, diet's huge. Huge. If you're a boy and you're struggling with anxiety, like test anxiety and stuff, like eat some good food. Eat some salad. Have some chicken and some broccoli, right? Go for a long walk, not a run. Running's actually terrible for anxiety. If you have anxiety, don't run. It actually increases the anxiety. Go for a long walk. Because you're producing cortisol when you run. You'll burn dopamine and you'll feel better, but you're producing so much cortisol, and that's the problem with anxiety. If you would go for a long walk, okay, you'll get the same dopamine hit without the cortisol release. And you'll feel really good. Dopamine is awesome. Dopamine's a great drug. You could sell that. We'd make some money. Sell dopamine and make some money. Play. Play is a huge... 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. Got 5 more things. Play is a huge cure for anxiety and depression. Okay? And here's what play is. Play is doing something you don't know how to do well. That's what play is. Okay? And if you have, when's the last time you've done something you don't know how to do well? That's what kids do all the time. Right? I'm going to go ride my bike. You know, like they're making up stuff. They don't know how to do stuff. They're using their imagination. If you want to help yourself with anxiety and depression, go learn to do something you don't know how to do. Go learn to fly fish. You know, go learn to do calligraphy. Go learn to do something you don't know how to do. And tell yourself it's called play. I'm playing. This is play. And you will see symptom relief almost immediately. Almost immediately. People in my office start drawing stuff. Depressed people start drawing things. I can get depressed people start yelling at me and they're not depressed. Which I think is funny. Like I get them yelling, they're not depressed, right? So you get people to play, they're not depressed, they're not anxious, they're playing. So find a hobby, play. Right? And play is not watching TV. That's not a hobby. Okay, watching, what's the new things like 10 episodes, How to Make a Murderer? Okay, that's not a hobby. Binge watching Hulu is not a hobby. That's called zoning out, mindlessness. Okay, play. I've got into Legos. Like I have kids, I got into Legos. Like I've built these big elaborate Lego things. Like I'm like the doctor, who's the guy on the Lego movie, the dad? Well, yeah, but what was his character's name? He had this Mr. Business. Like I'm like, get away from my Legos. Like I glue them. And for about 2 years, that was like a big thing for me. Like, and it helped me so much. Now I build things out of wood. Just building this giant treehouse right now. Never built a treehouse in my life, and it's turned into like the Taj Mahal of treehouses. It's huge. We ran out of money on it. It's so big. It's like, it's got electricity. Seriously, we literally ran out of money. I spent all this money on the treehouse. I'm like way in on the treehouse. But it's so fun. And other people are inspired by my treehouse. Other people, like neighbors, come over, literally watching me build my treehouse. I can't build stuff. But this idea of play, for me, that's a huge thing. Doing something I don't know how to do. And it kind of sits a little crooked. Like it's kind of like that. But it's awesome. I don't care. It's play. Okay? Play is great relief, great coping mechanism. Having a spiritual awakening, which you can't manufacture. This is the hardest one of the thing. Spiritual awakening actually has been proven to relieve people of all kinds of problems. I don't know how to tell you how to have a spiritual awakening. Okay, get really low on yourself, hate yourself for a while, then something will happen to you. But once you realize you've hit bottom, that's when good things start happening. But you can't make somebody hit bottom. That's just their own consequences. But spiritual awakenings can really help you. You can't manufacture them though. So the harder you try to have a spiritual awakening, the more anxious and depressed you'll become. But it does help if you can find the way to have it. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is not meditation. This word's been hijacked. In the research, mindfulness is noticing your current state of being. You don't have to meditate for 5 hours to get there. If you just notice that you're anxious, you're being mindful. Okay? If you notice that you're depressed, you're being mindful. If you notice that you're hungry, you're being mindful. Right? That's called mindfulness. If you notice that what it's like to just stand there for a minute, feel your body, that's called mindfulness. And if you're mindful, by definition, you cannot be asking the question of what's going to be happening next. Because you'll be attached to yourself and you're going, I'm okay. Right? And if you can do that for like a minute or two and start practicing that rhythm of noticing things. Some people in the room know, I work with professional athletes too, and one of the things we work on is, I worked with a baseball player last week, is his approach to the plate. And he intuitively knew lots of things. He would look at the grain of the bat. He would study the grain of the bat. He would focus on the grain of the bat. He would look at the dirt. He would. One thing he never did is looked at the pitcher. He already knew. You don't look at the pitcher. Because the minute you look at the pitcher, you start thinking, what's going to happen next? And a baseball player who's thinking, what's going to happen next, is called a strikeout. Because they know how to hit a ball, or they wouldn't be in the major leagues. Right? So we work with baseball players on actually just noticing what's happening inside themselves and approaching the moment. Being in the moment, is what it's called. Being in the zone is what athletes call it. Right? Where it's just the game is just happening and coming to them. Okay? So that's called mindfulness. Another thing is called play. It's creativity. It's like play, except it's using your right brain to create things. Draw. Do something you're not good at. Draw. Stick figures. Notice anything and draw it. Or notice something beautiful and write 2 paragraphs about it. Just if you set your intention to go, I wonder what beautiful thing I'll see today, or interesting thing I'll see today, and you spend 10 minutes writing about that, anxiety and depression goes down. Okay? Be creative. Right? See if we have any more. That's it. So y'all can leave. It's 8:05, or you can ask questions, and I will not be hurt if you need to go. I'll be a little hurt. But if you need to go, you can go. If you want to ask questions, we can talk. Let's see. Healthy anxiety. All anxiety is healthy. Okay, because it's normal. Okay? It's normal. But if I don't have other coping skills, it becomes a psychological impairment. Right? Pushing versus, what's that? Motivating. If someone has to motivate you, you got a problem. If you're not motivated, then you're asking someone to scare you to go do something.
But as a teenager,
Oh, they're so tough now. I got a 13-year-old son, man. He's a pain in the rear. He's the laziest human being I've ever met in my life. Not really, right? Not really. But it sure feels that way because he's not an adult yet. He's not going out and getting them. And he doesn't do the things I did. And he doesn't want to do them with gusto. And he doesn't want to do a good job, right? So I do ask him the question when he brings his work to me at night to check to make sure he's done his work, because he's notorious about saying he did his work and not really doing his work because he doesn't really want to do the work, right? Because he's 13. Is it normal for a 13-year-old to want to do homework? No. No. A 13-year-old that wants to do homework is called abnormal. Okay? And that's okay to be abnormal. Like, go be weirdo, do your homework. That's great. We need presidents in the future. Go be a president. That's great. Okay? But the rest of us don't want to do homework. Now, how do I motivate? I need to give him something that he wants to do in it that's worth him suffering in order to have it. And that's really unique to each kid. Okay? And if it's just the fear of dad getting pissed off, that's not enough. That produces anxiety. Or the fear of being a failure, or the fear of my father not being okay if I don't do my homework. That's a massive amount of, if I don't get an A, my dad's not going to be okay. That's not motivation. That's called terror. It really is. It's a life for a child, it's life or death for mom and dad not to be okay. Right? And so the best way to motivate a child is to ask them what's in it for them. What do they want out of it? And so the question I ask my children, is this good work? Have you done good work? No. Okay? And I'm doing long-tail parenting. Like I'm parenting for when they're like 40, not for now. So I'm going to let the 7th grade son get Fs. He got an F last week. Okay? It was his F, wasn't my F. I'm okay. I got my F, son. Like, you got your F now. All right, it's just like the old man. Okay? Right? But he's going to be okay even with an F. He's going to be okay with an A. Right? And they're his grades. Now that's, for me, I'll tell you, this between me and you and the video camera, I'm so scared of that. I'm so scared of that. Because I know that if he doesn't find motivation, his life's going to be really miserable. But if he needs me writing him his whole life, my life's going to be really miserable. You know? And so a lot of the problem with adolescent and child anxiety and depression is not the child. I kind of saved that to the end, like the heavy statement at the end. And I think you all kind of know it or you wouldn't be here. I think everybody in this room is enlightened enough to kind of know on some level that if my child's struggling with something, it's probably not his problem. It might be something happened to him. It might be a way I'm parenting. And is there something I can do to change who I am and be okay with me so that I'll be okay with whoever he is? And to be honest, I have really idea. I was a Division I soccer player. Okay, I was all conference team, team MVP, captain, and not one of my 4 kids play soccer. Oh. And I've got this one that is left-footed and fast and athletic and courageous and he's a left back in the making. He's undersized for like a basketball player, but for a left back, he's fast and man, I don't like soccer. Okay? I've got to be okay with that. I've got to be okay with that. I've got to keep working on now. Every year at soccer sign-ups, like, sure you want to play soccer? It's like, not too late. Like, you're good enough to make the travel team. No, He does gymnastics. He's great at gymnastics. You want to go, do the competition team? Nah. But he's motivated. He just drew a whole comic book, literally a 200-page comic book. He's motivated. He's wasting all those gifts. How's his dad going to get credit? Right? Okay? So, and I do push my children. I had a son that fell in a fire pit a few years ago. And seriously, he fell in a fire pit, skin grafts, burn unit. It's awful. Okay? And to get home from the hospital, when they do burn grafts, they take human sod off of your body and they put it on the new place. And the burn doesn't hurt anymore because that's all dead. What hurts is where they took the skin graft, and it's incredibly painful. And they basically torture people to do the recovery. It's awful. But for him to go home, he had to go from here to there. And I couldn't make him do it. Taught me more about parenting in those 45 steps than I'll ever need to learn. Son, do you want to go home? Yes. You got to go there. And I stayed with him. I encouraged him. I cried with him. And the first day we went this far. The next day we went this far. Third day we went this far. The fourth day he used some choice words to tell the physical therapist what he could do. And I was kind of proud of him because it got him that far. Because the guy started shaming him about how he wasn't trying hard enough. And my son said, you know what you can do? You can shut up. This is a 12-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy at that point. That's motivation, right? And so we only learn real motivation when bad things happen to us. And we want it more than the external consequences. It's going to hurt, but I want it. And, so I would pray for really bad things to happen to your children if you want to be motivated. Suicidal, okay. Anxiety sucks, okay? And so we want relief from it. So we turn to things like sugar, alcohol, marijuana, pornography, work, exercise, gambling. We turn to things that make sense of anxiety. Okay, I have council day, let me change the story up. NFL linebacker, okay, for a while. He was a very successful NFL linebacker, all-pro NFL linebacker. The minute he retired, guess what he could no longer do? Fly on a plane, sit still, sleep through the night, because for 20 years, high school, college, and the pros, his anxiety had a focus. It was to kill that person with the ball. That made all kinds of sense of his anxiety. The minute he stopped, he started having to drink alcohol. He started having to take sleeping pills. He started having all kinds of stuff happened to try to deal with this thing. Okay? So, substance use and abuse, nicotine, great drug. Nicotine's a great drug because it stimulates, by great, I'm not endorsing the use of nicotine. Okay? It stimulates and sedates at the same time. It's a very elegant drug. It's one of the only drugs that does that at the same time. Okay? So if you have anxiety, like smoke a cigarette, you'll feel better. If you're depressed, smoke a cigarette, you'll feel better. It works for both people. Alcohol just depresses you. Cocaine just stimulates you, but nicotine does both in a small way. Great drug. Highly addictive, really hard to quit. Okay? And it'll give you cancer and you'll die. Don't do it. Bad. Don't do nicotine. Say no to drugs. But drugs and alcohol are a great solution to anxiety and depression, except they'll kill you. That's the only problem with them, is that you can't get enough for them to keep working and they'll end up killing you. It's like, darn. Right? If they didn't kill you and you could just drink a little bit to make them work, then that'd be great. But as soon as you start taking some, the brain learns, well, this dopamine's good, so I'm going to say you need more, and all of a sudden you start needing more, and it doesn't work, you build tolerance, you need more, and then all of a sudden you die. It might take 20 years, but you'll die from it. Okay? So these aren't badness. Okay? It's just an attempt to cope with this. And if we don't have other tools, creativity, imagination, security, and love, okay, that tell us we're okay and help us be okay with our world, alcohol and drugs are logical conclusions. And suicide is a wonderful conclusion to the problem of life. Because suicide is not hopelessness. Suicide is an attempt to kill hope. Depressed people, this could sound crazy at first, but a depressed person can't kill themselves while they're depressed, because depressed people don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to move. It takes a great act of will to go against all your DNA and to kill yourself. It takes a great passion, a great desire, a great, I just can't be in this pain anymore. Damn it, I want it to be different. Okay? So logically, Nietzsche even said it, like suicide's a great logical conclusion if you have nothing to live for. If there's no meaning in the world, suicide's pretty logical. Suicide is not an illogical problem. It's an emotional and spiritual problem. It's a desire to kill hope. It's I cannot stand the pain of hoping anymore. Okay? And it's a huge problem. It's a growing problem because we live in an ever more hopeless world. People don't have hope. There's no common truth. Get my soapbox for a second. There's nothing we all believe in. There's no common values. We're a society that's ripping apart. I guarantee you there are not Muslims who are killing. There's not jihadists who are killing themselves. Didn't mean to say Muslims. They're not jihadists who are committing suicide. They're suicide. We call them suicide bombers. That's not. They're going on to Allah. Okay, because those people have a common focus and a common value that they all believe in. That's something. Like that we want to treat suicide as a mental health issue, and it has mental health implications, but it's really a more emotional, fundamental, sociological problem of hopelessness and despair. And we need to band together and encourage people and love each other for that to be different. And we're not good at that anymore. We're a fractured society. And we're left and we're right. That's a huge problem. And we're more alike than different. Everybody in this room, regardless of your age, regardless of your color, regardless of your background, we're 99.9% exactly the same DNA-wise. We're more alike than different. Okay? That doesn't mean our stories aren't unique. and we don't need to listen to each other's stories and understand how other people's stories affect them. But if we don't start with how we're alike, how we're all made exactly the same way, we're all made the same way, then there's no way to bring us back together. And if the solution is love, I'm okay. Someone loves me, then the foregone, if we don't have that solution, then we're going to have violence, we're going to have war, we're going to have suicide, we're going to have alcohol, we're going to have drugs. All right. What questions do you have? That was, heavy. And you can go. It'll hurt my feelings, but you can go. Yes? Encourage is right word. I should have said that. Can we rewind the tape? You want to push and motivate, you want to encourage, which means the word courage means heart. Courier, Latin word, French word, heart. Okay? To give heart to. I believe in you. I know you can do this. I'm with you. Keep going. You want this, do you want this? No. Oh, then why are we doing this? You know? To encourage. Go as hard as you can. I'll be there when you're done. You know? The greatest thing you can say to a person after a game, did you have fun? I loved watching you play. Did you have fun? Right? That's what kids want to hear. They don't want to go over the game. Okay? Ever. I know we do as parents. I want to dissect every play. Okay? But the kid wants, did you have fun? No. Oh, really? Why not? Well, the referee, coach, team, didn't score. Okay. I love watching you play. I'm okay. Right? Encourage. Go you give everything you got. You go give everything you got. And if you didn't give everything you got, you go give more. That's encouragement. You know? I believe in you. Go. That's a great word. That's a great word. That was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Don't motivate, encourage. Yes. Give heart to. Yes. Next question. Okay. We're done. I answered all your questions. I was totally thorough. I know I said some things that you don't agree with. That's okay. We can disagree. I know you wish the answer was more simple. I do too. All right. Well, I'll hang out here a little bit. Will, thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
We can thank Stephen for stopping our payment on college and starting our payments on counseling.
Oh yeah, I'm not saving for my kids' college. I'm saving for their therapy.
Yeah. But we have it taped, so it'll be in the push page. It takes a few days, so we'll publish that. But glad you all are here and have a good night.